a new type of language of inclusivity. One of the things that we start off is to look at Isa alayhi salam, how it's being discussed in the Quran. Isa is known as Al-Masih, and Masih comes from the Arabic form, Fa'il, just like Hamid. If your name is Hamid, it means at once Hamid and Mahmud, means you are praising and being praised. If Masaha means to touch, and so Masih means touching and being touched. In the time of Isa alayhi salam, there were lepers, and lepers had to keep a distance of 30 cubits from non-lepers. Isa alayhi salam allowed the leper to approach him, allowed the leper to touch him. He turned around, touched the leper, healed that leper, and also healed many lepers afterwards. And so we often tell Christians and Muslims that if we want to be Isa-like, if we want to be Christ-like or Jesus-like, then we need to look at those people who have a leper status in society and have a healing touch or have a healing presence. If we want to be Masih from Dajjal, Masaha means to distort, Masaha means to conflate, Masaha means to deceive. And so if you deceive, if you conflate, and if you distort, then you are anti-Christ-like, you are Dajjal-like. Many of our media in the USA qualify for that. Many of our politicians like Trump and others qualify for that. And many of our even academics qualify. People at Harvard even and other Ivy League institutes are Dajjal-like in the sense that they distort, they conflate, and they deceive. We often have the term, يُحَرِّفُونَ الْكَلِمَ عَنْ مَوَاضِعِهِ, just playing around with words and twisting the truth. But perhaps one of the greatest challenges of any democracy today is not sometimes the right to freedom of speech, often the right of freedom after speech, but we all give the right to the truth. And if you know what WikiLeaks is all about, you know what Edward Snowden is all about, we have only the tip of the iceberg of falsehood. And it's almost impossible for us to know exactly what the truth is. The type of media you're exposed to in South Africa may not be the media that we find most of the time in the US, just pure distortion. We have artificial terrorism. We have preemptive prosecutions, preemptive strikes. 98% of the drone attacks happening throughout the world target innocent people, hundreds or thousands, you can say, of innocent children and women. And so speaking truth to power, that has become almost a new calling. And we've often done that at interfaith settings. We've gone into churches, gone into synagogues, and spoke those few words. The question is whether Muslims themselves sometimes become Dajjal-like. If we also distort the truth, we also qualify to be not Dajjal, but Dajjal-like. And so may Allah protect us from that. Let me read through the presentation I gave at the Thanksgiving event where both rabbis, priests, pastors, and Christians and Jews were, and few Muslims. So it was on a Thanksgiving occasion, and we said that Thanksgiving is often used as a time to thank the God of Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Christ, and Muhammad, peace be with them all, for tangible material gifts. But today I would like to thank God for the countless intangible blessings of our faith and our wisdom traditions. We have countless ideals and ideas and ideals, spiritual virtues and ethical values, prophetic vision, saintly and sermonic lives to draw from. And then we have the 10 or 13 commandments, the Beatitudes, the cardinal virtues, and the warning against the 7 deadly sins. 3 spiritual virtues stand out: humility, truth, and charity. Humility should be truthful and charitable. Truth or truthful, or satyagraha, graha, should be humble and generous. And charity should be truthful and humble, not a trap or followed by reproach or injury. We have traditions that claim universal appeal. We all embrace both the oneness of God and the oneness of humanity. Our 3 faith traditions have the golden rule: respect for the stranger, loving our neighbor as ourselves, the noble law, we have similar core values with different emphases. Neighbors, love with justice, just peace, loving mercy, empathic imagination, inclusive excellence, patient perseverance, consummate sensibilities of prophetic teachings, and a sense of perspective that God sees the people we dislike in a different way. We all share the belief that in order to be spiritual, we need to heal ourselves and society through our presence, our words, our deeds, our profound sense of fairness, and our conviction that the impossible could become the inevitable. Miracles do happen, systemic change is possible, and barbaric communities could be transmuted and transformed. Tragedies could turn into triumphs, hostilities into hospitality, and meanness into meaningfulness, hurt into healing. South America, with its torture capitals, now enjoy great prosperity. The Catholics, infamous for the Inquisition, Crusades, Holocaust, 100,000 stolen children in Australia and in the USA, have some of the finest inclusive institutions and the most admired leader in the person of Pope Francis. Former assassins became pacifists. Many nations turned swords into plowshares. Out of the misery of our struggle for independence, and that is the American struggle, from the British Crown, some of the most enlightened Americans, the founding fathers, have created one of the finest documents, the U.S. Constitution. They placed friezes of great lawmakers such as Moses, Muhammad, and Umar in the U.S. Supreme Court. We also recognize our need to be vigilant, not to corrode our democracy, our capitalism, and maintain a separation of church and hate. Give credit where credit is due. The Native Americans who taught the early pilgrims on Plymouth Rock to survive Squanto say 59 pilgrims would have died like the other 50 before them, and that's saved the colony. The Iroquois, from whom the Americans took their federal system, the immigrants with the ethic of hard work and the incredible creativity. Steve Jobs was the son of an immigrant, and 20,000 Syrians in Detroit more than 100 years ago in 1914 signed up for the U.S. Army. Since 9/11, 750,000 refugees were accepted, not a single case of terrorism. In Europe, for a period of 12 years, there were 500 cases of terror. Only 3 were Muslim-related, and those were for political and not religious reasons. In the USA, the FBI site reported that over a period of 12 years, there were 4% terror cases, and Muslim relayed 40% or reported 40% of those cases to the authorities. And so some Americans that escaped persecution have scapegoated many religious and ethnic communities. First were the Baptists and the Quakers and the Catholics and Orthodox Christians, Jews, Muslims, Irish, Italians, socialists. They have the Trumbo set up, where during the time from the period of 1951 to 75, many people just after the Second World War were very impressed with the Russians and socialism. They were not communists in the true sense of the word, but the American people in power, the conservatives in power, went after them, created conspiracies around these people. One of the greatest conspiracy theories is a conspiracy theory against Islam. And anyone who just starts to dig at the truth suddenly becomes called a conspiracy theorist. If there's so much lies, so much distortion out there, then even digging out part of the truth, you are being called a conspiracy theorist, and not those people who create the conspiracy that every Muslim is a terrorist. Even having a hijab is a form of passive terrorism. So you have what we call the Zionist Islamophobia. Many of the policy papers are written by Zionists and led by Zionists and then fed to the US Army, the FBI, and many of these other groups out there. This is just an aside. So America always had these paroxysms of paranoia and always these outbursts of hysteria. And fortunately, they had a form of autocorrection where they always moved towards inclusivity and then including the newcomers. Perhaps it's in the nature of the nation state to have visible and vulnerable enemies. Weaker communities, some of us are able to bully. Resilience of the human spirit is one of our greatest gifts. Viktor Frankl survived the Holocaust, introduced us to logotherapy, using meaning as a form of healing. Today, people feel, in America today, there's almost 1 million people every year attempting suicide. Out of those 1 million, 40,000 succeed in committing suicide through guns and drugs, legal and illegal drugs. And what they found is that because there's that psychological inflexibility, one of the ways to heal people who are about to be suicidal or suicidal is through meaning, is through values. So healing through meaning, healing through values is one of the great antidotes to suicide. So using meaning as a form of healing. Mr. Mandela survived 27 years apartheid and bequeathed us a healthy South African democracy. But democracy will only be beautiful if those people who are part of that democracy, if they are ethical beings, if they are principled. We have seen the sabotaging of different democracies simply because people do not even have a moral minimum or a spiritual minimum. And so it's important that we inculcate those minimums within our communities. And also Václav Havel on Czechoslovakia, role model healthy politics that brings out the best in all people. Prince Charles changed his title from the Defender of the Faith, which is the Anglican Church, to the Defender of Faith, of all faiths. And the Archbishop of Canterbury showed us that interfaith cooperation is indeed possible. Canadian PM Justin Trudeau took gender justice and inclusion to the next level. 50% of those in the ministerial cabinet, one of very, very young and admirable leaders of Canada today, 50% of them are women, one Muslim, 4 Sikhs, and there are 9 other Muslims in his broader parliament. And then Muslims put a lot in, interestingly, Arabs too. We put all our weight behind Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders, even though he's a Jew, a socialist, he has consistently shown that he's a compassionate being. And so the saying of Ibn Taymiyyah, that if you have to choose a country where there's a non-Muslim ruler and there are Muslims let us say a non-Muslim ruler who stands for justice, like the Najasi or the Negus, and you have to choose between a Muslim ruler is unjust, you should rather choose the place where there's justice. And so this comes from a person no other than Ibn Taymiyyah himself. And so justice has always been the core value of Islam, and that's something that we need to strive for. So yeah, Muslims put their weight behind Bernie Sanders, Arabs put their weight behind Bernie Sanders. Hillary Clinton's campaign was very shocked that the largest Arab community outside the Arab world were supporting Bernie and not supporting Clinton as such. And so countless tragedies have turned into triumph. A 14-year-old boy made a clock in Texas. He was arrested for that, but he was invited to the White House and Google's headquarters. And then at one day, I think it was October the 10th of 2015, many of the bigots in America decided to march onto 30 masajid in 20 cities. It all turned into a fiasco. In the one city of Cincinnati, only one person turned up. Eventually, a Jewish historian went to haggle and speak with her. Then she came over into the mosque and had a very sumptuous and wonderful breakfast. Muslims are wonderful at giving feasts and feeding people in a very wonderful way. But what we've also learned in America is, in order for other people to recognize our pain, we must also acknowledge that other people are in pain. The largest lynching that took place in the history of America was the lynching of Chinese people, where 17 Chinese people were lynched at one day. We also call the killing of the 3 dental students, we call that a lynching. The killing recently of 2 imams, execution style. That's just the KKK style or the Blackwater style. They lynch different people that at one stage falls into disfavor. Affronts to human dignity and countless violations of human rights are already smuggled deep into the obscurity of our memory, throwing away our freedoms at home on falsehood, according to Peter van Buren. In our resolve to win the World War II, 2.5 million African American males were used and almost 3 million African American females. After the war, the GI Bill that used about 84 billion US dollars favored mostly white Americans and took many of the poor Americans out of crime into the middle class. But the story we learn from the GI Bill is that crime is, you can resolve crime. There's creative ways to fight crime. Brazil took about 50 million poor people out of poverty. Bill Gates single-handedly decided to fight world malaria throughout the world, and he's achieved his goal. And so anything that seems impossible for us can become possible if we want it to be possible. I think it's important for us as South Africans to ask ourselves the questions, what are the things that we could do to South Africa and to the neighbors to make us seem to the world as compassionate beings? If there are 7 million people from Zimbabwe, how could we go to the root of the problem there and be a force for good? And so going to the root, being ulul albab, people of the essence, people going to the root of everything, that's extremely important. But becoming change agents, that's also powerful. If you are not going to be at the table, you will be on the menu. If you are not going to be at the table, you will be on the menu. The African Americans have seen since the civil rights movement that there were only a few hundred African Americans in political positions. Now in the USA, if you're on the municipality, if you're on the city board, if you are fighting with helping with the police as a person, an outreach person, every position becomes a political position. And so from 50 years ago till now, the African Americans have increased from a few hundred persons in these positions to 11,500. So when Ferguson happened, they could immediately change the leadership of the police in Ferguson and wherever there were some of these injustices taking place. Don't complain. You live in Wynberg, you live in Constantia, you live in Manenberg, whichever city you live. If you want to see some change, you have to go right to the government level. Some of the best people to do that often are women. And so go out there. I know we have one woman per minister, but that's not enough. That's a shame for such a vibrant and such a large community that we have out here. So there are many lessons you could take from the American experience, bring it back into the South African experience, but most important is that we all have to become people of compassion. One of the other luxuries that we do not have in the USA is to become anti-Shia or anti-Kharijite or anti-this or anti-that. We live in a city where maybe 50% of the community or 45% are Shia. Many of them are some of the best friends you could ever have. They are the most educated imams. They are most well-respected people. And they are not out there to convert you. And shame on us if we feel insecure. We have that politics of insecurity that just by rubbing shoulder with the Shia, we're suddenly going to become Shia. If you are not going to prepare yourself intellectually to meet that, to know Shiism even better than the Shias know their own tradition, then there's always going to be strife. Do not let the enemies of Islam let you fall into the trap of sectarianism. That is how they have divided us throughout the colonial period, and especially now in this new colonial period that we are facing. And I know this is extremely sensitive topic in this, but maybe we have the luxury of saying that because 2 weeks from now I'll be running back and flying back to the US. But it's important. I have students who are Shia. I employ teachers who are Shia. We have some of the children. 5 a.m. they stand up, and all of them are Africans, either Zulu or Xhosa, Swana. All their teachers are African. 1/3 of those children, anyone is game, anyone is open to that. And so be careful, just not to believe everything you say. The German papers said that Erdogan, who was a good guy right up to 2013, but the German papers felt that he himself orchestrated the coup in order to just get rid of some of his critics. A day after the coup, he had about 70,000 list of 70,000 people that he wanted to target. May Allah protect us. May Allah give us access to the truth. May Allah subhanahu give us the right to the truth and help us to live in a healthy democracy. I have many other things to mention. Just I think one of the other opportunities we have in the States is also we have many marriages where at those weddings, and sometimes those are very large weddings, maybe hundreds or even 1,000 people, there's always so many non-Muslims. So we use every opportunity at the wedding to always get a message across about Islam, where people know almost little or nothing about Islam. May Allah bless our community, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us of those who see, Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqa warzuqna ittiba'a. Let us see the truth as truth and follow that, and see falsehood as falsehood, and help us to knock out the brains of falsehood with the truth. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa kafa wa salam ala ibadillah alladhi nastafa. Amma ba'd. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad wa ashabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, khususan ala al-khulafa ar-rashidin Abi Bakr wa Umar wa Uthman wa Ali radhiyallahu anhu wa ala sa'ir as-sahaba wa tabi'in wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsan ila yawm al-din. Allahumma a'izz al-Islam wal Muslimin. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين اللهم انصر المسلمين في كل مكان اللهم انصرنا ولا تنصر علينا وامكر لنا ولا تمكر علينا واهدنا سبل السلام وجنبنا الفواحش ما ظهر منها وما بطن اللهم ادفع عنا البلاء والوباء والزنا والزلازل والمحن وسوء الفتن اللهم ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم Allahumma ansurna wa la tansur alayna wa amkur lana wa la tamkur alayna. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to assist us, do not assist against us. Wa amkur lana, and plan for us and do not plan against us. Jamaatul Muslimin, just a very last point. I want each and every one of us to find sanctuary in our faith, to find sanctuary in our ethics and praxis, and find sanctuary in our spirituality. And whatever you do, do it with a type of humor and type of playfulness. Even Plato said that playfulness is one of the highest form of intellectuality. I think the section 16 of the South African Constitution says that we have the right to freedom and creativity. Bring that creativity to live Islam creatively and also to defend Islam in a very creative way. One of the great poems I love is a poem by an Iranian scholar, Fatima Keshavaz, and she writes about, oh, highly praised one. You can Google that. And just one piece of that, I'm just going to read that. Few biographers speak of your humor, O Prophet of Islam. They figure blood, blind anger, and other wrenching things go better with a war and terror. But I'm going to smuggle some more of your laughter into this poem anyway. One day a dying woman asked you, would a sick old wretch like me be allowed into paradise? No, you answered with a straight face. You'll be young and healthy by the time you get there. We need your humor, O highly praised one. We need it now more than ever. Teach me how to smile. Teach me to take in and cherish every glimmer of hope, the rays of tranquility that emanate from the perfect diction of peace be upon you. Teach me to be that peace. Let me dream about flaunting my friendship with you, the way Grandma publicized the perfection of your arch eyebrows when she saw in a dream so long ago she could not remember when. In a dream, you stood upon a hill far and near, and luminous with delight she stepped close and closer to the foot of the hill, and fragrance in the air overwhelmed the senses. From that point on she remembered little except the perfection of your bright face and arch eyebrows, which echoed in the soft tremor in her voice as she whispered, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, peace be upon him. And just lastly, Jamaatul Muslimin, the song or the madah of Mas'ud Curtis, Ruhi Fida, just quickly translate that, in love for the Prophet. One day my eyes slumbered while my heart's longing grew. I was enveloped by your vision, O Prophet of God, Ahmad, the most praised one, light of guidance. My longing transcended all bounds. My eyes hoped for the sight of you. My soul I would sacrifice for you, O my beloved. The Prophet's ghost or apparition appeared, embraced my heart. My hands melted in his. My eyes called out and invited him. His splendor touched my heart. His pool of pure water, Kauthar, on the day of judgment is quenching and abundant. A single sip is like medicine to me. Quench my spiritual thirst, O my beloved, O healer of creation. You are my balm and my cure. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون فاذكروا الله العظيم يذكركم ودعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله تعالى أعلى وأولى وعز وجل وتم وأكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون.